Hello, everybody, and welcome to Curtis's Podcast Network, and welcome to We Are Texans Wednesday, a day late but not a dollar short, and we're out here today talking about QB1. Who's it going to be? Should it be CJ Stroud just because of the high draft capital used on him? Should it be Davis Mills and let CJ Stroud learn the technique aspects of the quarterback position to a higher level? No. No injuries yet. Other than our starting center, Quisenberry, is out again, or not again, but out for the year. By the way, what's up, Robert? How are you doing? Before we get into any of that, let's first hit the subscribe button. And we're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers. We're at 358 at the time of this recording. So please share with your friends. Share with anybody who might have any sort of association with the AFC South. And let's get it. Number one, I got a haircut. Short hair Curtis in the building. I don't have it in a ponytail. It's gone. Short hair. You're the first people to know. With that being said, to start or to not start CJ Stroud? That is the question. Is it worth it to start him this year based on the first preseason game? And I know, small sample size. We'll get a better one Saturday. He's going to get hopefully a lot more playing time. And we'll get a bigger sample size and something to look at, something to hope for. And that'll help a lot. But the other day against the Patriots, he looked shaken. Obviously, the offensive line was a huge part of that, and there's nothing he can really do anything about that. So we're going to need to see some depth at the offensive line, and we're going to need to see him give CJ Stroud an appropriate amount of time to make his reads. In that preseason game against the Patriots, his footwork was off. The way he was reading plays was weird. The decision-making was not there. He looked rattled. He looked nervous. He looked like he was trying not to throw bad passes while also simultaneously pushing the envelope on a couple, and one of them ended up being an interception. Of course, Jalen Mills, but the footwork and the other technical aspects, making sure you're doing the appropriate drop count and stuff like that, that's what practice is for. You do those things in practice. But what that tells me is Ryan Day, and to an extent Urban Meyer when he was at Ohio State, did not at any point institute a pro-style offense that made it a transitional piece for the quarterbacks to go from this level, or from the college level, to the NFL level. That's why we're waiting years to see if Justin Fields can be the guy. And then a 7th-round draft pick last season, Brock Purdy, comes in already from a pro-style system at Iowa State. And he adapts quickly, makes smart moves, and knows what to do with the football. I'm not saying that he can't adjust and adapt. I'm saying, why rush it? If he's the franchise quarterback, if this team is in the middle of a rebuild, which it has been for years now, why do all of the eggs have to be pushed into the basket this season? I'll tell you why. Nick Caserio. Nick Caserio needs something to keep his job. Now, a couple of the draft picks last year have panned out pretty well. I would say probably double that amount have not worked out very well in the past. We're still waiting on Nico Collins. Davis Mills is proving himself to be a serviceable backup or whatever. But there are a lot of guys on this team that are on one-year deals. They're prove-it deals. This is a C-level team, like the letter C, not C-level. This is a C-tier team on paper. Usually those teams don't do very well. The realistic expectations for CJ Stroud, if you throw him out there, are going to be low and tempered because this team is not the most deep at any one position. We have a lot of question marks at the wide receiver room, the offensive line outside of, well, with the young guys on the interior. That's the big question marks there. You hope that Titus Howard makes himself worth that money in the long run, but he's only really had 1 year of solid production to back anything up. And that's my big issue is we just gave him a bunch of money after 1 year of decent work. The first 2 years of his career were marred by injury. Last year he was out a couple games, but or not. Maybe he wasn't out. Maybe he just had to play left guard after Kenyon Green got hurt. But a lot of these things that a lot of Texans fans are talking about, it's hoping and wishing. You hope CJ Stroud takes the step to be the franchise guy this year by putting him in now. But if you wait and you let him, and hold on, I'll complete the first thought and then I'll come back to that. So let's just say we throw him out there. He doesn't do great, doesn't even do good, does average. Do you think that affects the, college football playoff losing quarterback's confidence? I think it does, especially considering the team he's on is not the same caliber of team he was on in college. Ohio State annually has a bunch of players taken in the draft. A bunch. 2 tackles this year were drafted out of Ohio State in the first round, offensive tackles. There were Jackson Smith and Jigba, wide receiver, taken in the first round. Marvin Harrison Jr., he's going to be taken in the first round next year. These are dudes that he was playing with that are premier, top-tier talent in college. And then he comes here, and we're hoping that Robert Woods can shake the rust off. We're hoping that Nico Collins can put together a whole season. We're hoping that John Mechie, Tank Dell, or any of these other guys can take several steps and solidify the wide receiving core if Nico or Robert Woods cannot, in fact, do what we need them to do or what we hope them to do. Robert says he looked like he was on the run, and hell yeah, that affects him. He was always on the move. The offensive line gave him no time. Austin Deculus was a turnstile at right tackle, and they had George Fant playing left tackle, who got worked a couple different times. But even still, there were some plays where he had the right idea, just executed it poorly. He tried to get it over one guy who was rushing at him and ended up overthrowing Devin Singletary in the process. But if he would have looked to the play side instead of the backside, there was a tight end waiting there with a couple of blockers, and it could have gotten something rather than nothing. Still preseason, though. Good point, Titan Fox. If he goes out there, wins 4 or 5 games, he's going to have, 1, experience now. 2, he'll have, realistic expectations for year 2. But it might affect his confidence. This is a guy who probably hasn't lost that many games since high school, maybe even before then. And that's going to mess with his head. Last year, they only lost to 2 teams. That was Georgia and Michigan. Those were elite teams. And Georgia had to make a historic comeback on CJ Stroud's Ohio State to even get to the national championship. CJ, we were waiting on CJ during his senior season to have those big games. His best 2 games were against Michigan and against Georgia, both of which they fell short, which is interesting to me. And I feel like those are his best games because they're against the best talent. And he went out there and did things. Okay. So if he goes out there this season as a rookie, plays mediocre ball because the team around him is mediocre, I think it shakes his confidence. At least has the potential to if it doesn't outright. And that doesn't bode well for the future, no matter what talent you send around him. And we've made a trade with the Cardinals during the draft, so now our pick is now theirs. We hold on to the Cleveland Browns pick, and we're hoping that Deshaun Watson and DRT DTR don't do a whole lot. He had to at least know that by going high in the draft, he'd end up with lesser weapons than he was used to at Ohio State. You would think he would know that. You would think that he would understand that. Um, but even still, like it's going to be a dramatic drop off. And we haven't seen these guys in live action yet. Um, at this point, with the way that Davis Mills has done in camp, with the way he's done in preseason, and we'll see more of it next week and the following. If CJ Stroud does not show signs of progress on the technical aspect by the end of the preseason, like not making the same mistakes, I'll take that, and I'll shut up and I'll just sit there and watch him play. But if he doesn't, I think if he doesn't do that, I think you should start Davis Mills or Case Keenum, whoever, because honestly, I think they're at this point both roughly the same player. Case is probably not as athletic as Davis is at this juncture, but um, those two guys, while they might not light the world on fire, they're going to be something to learn from. It's also not going to put a lot of pressure on CJ Stroud to go out there and be great immediately because he's the number 2 overall pick. It allows him to perfect his craft in practice where the situation is not that dire. And if you can create the good habits in practice, they will translate into the game. But if you have enough really good practice, you have time to do those things, you will have a better quarterback by doing this. Patrick Mahomes didn't start till the last game of his rookie year and lit it up. And that was only because they'd already clinched their playoff spot. That's what you need. Exactly. That's exactly what they need. Now, Josh Allen, um, if Josh Allen, I don't think he actually sat, did he? Yeah, no, that's not like he might need a year like Mahomes or Josh Allen before we see what we want. You're right, TF. The Panthers O line looks just as bad, and they traded up. Yeah, no. See, I mean, a lot of teams out there are struggling to find the quarterback of the future. So they go out there, they spend a bunch of capital, and they feel like because they've spent so much, it's a stupid investment to sit him on the sidelines. And I, I can't grasp that. I cannot wrap my head around that. The best way to make sure that this is not a farce is to make sure that you put all of the time and attention you can into that investment before you send it out into the world, before you uh, cash in, I guess, so to speak. He needs time. The team needs to be better. It'll take time. I didn't think Josh Allen sat, but some of the better quarterbacks in NFL history have sat at different points of their career. Steve Young, I don't think he actually sat while he was in Tampa Bay. He may have, but when he got to San Francisco, he sat behind Joe Montana for a couple, 3, 4 seasons um, because he was considered a draft bust. And then he goes out and ends up having a Hall of Fame career. Um, Speaking of the second preseason game, it's already been announced. It did work for Mahomes and Aaron Rodgers. It's already been announced that CJ Stroud will start the second preseason game, and potentially rightfully so. Um, Peyton did stink it up his first year, and that's because they rushed him out there and they were just like, all right, while he came from a pro style offense, there was stuff and nuances that he didn't know that the college coaches didn't have enough time to elaborate on. And then once he started digesting film and everything, and like a maniac, by the way, hours and hours and hours of film and working on the field to perfect everything he possibly could, that's when all the lights went on. That's when everything clicked for Peyton. So like year 2, year 3, I think it was year 3 is when everybody was like, all right, yeah, no, this guy's pretty solid. I worry that there is too much pressure on this man to be starting immediately and to be great immediately. That because of that pressure, he won't live up to it, and that'll shake his confidence. And then we've wasted a number 2 overall pick just because we felt like we had to put him out there. It's a tired, boring take that makes no logical sense in any shape or form. He could end up like, yeah, here we go. He could end up like Luck and quit due to getting killed every game. That's what I'm screaming. Like, it's not the same kind of league anymore where you can necessarily afford to, let somebody sit for a year. But it worked for Mahomes, and that was pretty recently. And it's not like Mahomes didn't get his money. It's not like the Chiefs didn't see what they had in him. That was a first round draft pick. I don't care that Alex Smith was a decent or good quarterback at that time frame. That doesn't matter. What matters is Mahomes got to sit. Anybody could have been out there throwing the ball. It could have been his current backup, Matt Moore, 38 years old, out there flinging the ball like he did. And that could have been all he needed. He needed time to digest the new level of the game, the speed of everything, and he needed time to digest the playbook and the technique, which is something his coaches never did in college. Yeah, that's true. The best quarterbacks sat, and the ones that didn't went out there and had a rough start. I mean, look at Zach Wilson, number 2 overall pick. And that's actually something I was going to talk about too. The number 2 overall pick is just really, really bad to pick a quarterback at, but historically, for whatever reason, it's just they don't work there. Um, Things to watch preseason game 2. Watch his footwork. Watch CJ Stroud's footwork. That's what needs to improve the most. There was a 7-step drop that he was supposed to do while he was under center. Like it was like 11 steps. And then he was dancing around at the top of the steps and just no. No. It was not good. The O-line depth issues will be continuing because the O-line is not as solid as we hoped it would be, at least during the preseason. And I say at least because during the regular season, we'll actually have 3 of the 5 starters on the field, minimum. So we'll see how that goes. But I didn't want to wrap up the show without talking about the outstanding preseason performance by rookie wide receiver out of the University of Houston, Tank Dell. Everybody's saying he was a sleeper. He's quick. His size doesn't matter. You're dead right. At least against the Patriots the other day, they're in the preseason. He looked like he belonged. He made a phenomenal catch off of his calf muscle in the end zone on a beautifully thrown back shoulder ball by Davis Mills, by the way. And he made a few catches off of Davis Mills, actually. I think it was like a 20-yarder to start one of the drives. Mariota was second overall, so I see. Yeah, you're right, Titan Fox. Yeah, no, it's a weird lineage of second overall quarterbacks. Texans got some cap for O-line. We do, but we also are like number 11 in total offensive line um, cap space eaten up because we just extended Titus Howard, extended Shaq Mason, and Laramie Tunsil. We also brought back Scott Quesenberry, but he tore his MCL and ACL in the first week of camp. So now it's Juice Scruggs and Jared Patterson duking it out to be the centers, but it's primarily Juice Scruggs. Kenyon Green is the left guard. We're going to assume that he's starting and healthy. And if he is, then that'll be solid because we're hoping again that he takes steps forward. But yeah, no, Tank Dell, 5 receptions, 65 yards, touchdown. He looked sharp. He looked crisp. He was the one who was CJ Stroud was targeting when he threw the interception to Jalen Mills. They've formed a very quick relationship in camp, and I feel like that will translate pretty well in the regular season. I'm sorry, guys. But yeah, there's a lot to be hopeful for the Texans, but I don't think that hope means we have to rush anything. Fan the flame rather than throw it in and see if it catches. That's what you need to do. You got to, you know, light the fire, do everything you can to light the fire, but then you fan the flame. You stand off to the side and you fan the flame and let it grow. The academic aspect of learning the game when you're not starting is very crucial for a young quarterback. So please help me dispel this stupid notion that you got to have your tip top first round draft pick start immediately. On some teams, yeah, I guess like the Jacksonville Jaguars, you draft Trevor Lawrence, who's considered a generational guy. You just had basically, a 34 game rookie season because Urban Meyer was a dumpster fire of a human being. Regardless, this team is not ready to compete for the division. This team is not ready to compete for the playoffs. This team is ready to find out who the starters are going to be in the years going forward. Nico Collins doesn't do well this year, he's gone. Robert Woods doesn't do well this year, he's going to be a cap casualty. I can guarantee a lot of these guys, if they don't do well, will be gone if Devin Singletary doesn't get his shit together. But he threw awful blocks. He ran horribly. Mike Boone looked amazing comparatively. We'll see how it is with the starting offensive line. But we're not super shy about pulling the plug on cutting some dudes who are 1-year deals. So something to think about. And soon I'm going to start making a video about where to find elite quarterbacks in college. Not necessarily saying there's a QB school, like the school just you open the doors and bam, quarterbacks just churn out. No QB factories anymore. But where do they come from? So be on the lookout for that one. It might take me a while to make it because I'm a noob at all these things. But when it comes out, you guys will be the first to know. So without any further ado, I want to say thank you to everybody who's watching. TF, Robert in the chat, thank you guys. If you got anything you guys want to add, feel free. Also tweet me at Curtis PD Network or whatever the hell it is on X. X me, I don't know. Be good people.